War in Ukraine's Eastern Front significantly worsened, says General.
Here's a summary of the article.
Kyiv. Fighting along the northern portion of Ukraine's Eastern Front has significantly worsened in recent days, the commander of Kyiv's ground forces said on Saturday. Alexander Syrsky, who was visiting Ukrainian troops in the area, said Russian forces had regrouped after suffering losses and were attacking around the village of Makiyivka and towards the city of Kupiansk. Kyiv reported heated fighting around its eastern city of Avdiivka, saying Russian forces had not stopped assaulting the symbolic industrial hub for days in their attempt to surround it. Ukraine last week said Russia had stepped up assaults on the frontline city, which lies just 15 kilometers from Moscow-held Donetsk. For the fifth day already, the enemy has not stopped either assaulting or shelling positions around the city, Vitaly Barabash, the head of the city, said on Ukrainian television. Kyiv's Interior Ministry said Russian shelling had destroyed a 5-story building in the city, saying it believed a man in his 60s was under the rubble but that it was impossible to retrieve the body. It urged residents still in Avdiivka to evacuate. Ukraine also said that a Russian attack killed an 11-year-old boy in the eastern village of Bogatyr, also in the Donetsk region, some 80 kilometers west of Avdiivka.
This post received a score of 4,300, with an upvote ratio of 95%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Just to settle some debate here among people who did not actually read the article. By worsened, the general is saying intensified. The UA has not suffered any major defeats or losses in the north where he's referring to. He's saying the Russians have moved troops there after a battle in the east.
Indeed, the Russians are once again pushing hard against Ukraine. One teeny tiny problem. The Hamas-Israel war may have turned people's attention away from Ukraine, but the military strengths and weaknesses thus far remain the same.
If anything, the Russian situation seems to have weakened even further. They seem to be increasingly reliant on older models of armored vehicle, and recently some stats came out to suggest Ukraine was firing more artillery than Russia is, leaving Russia to rely more heavily on its infantry to make gains.
Forces naturally expend more ammunition during offensive operations. Ukraine is blitzing through its South Korean delivery right now. You are correct on worsening vehicle quality for Russia though. As they dig deeper into their stockpile, they're pulling less and less capable vehicles. Worth noting, however, that very rarely are these vehicles being sent to the front, as is, most of them are being upgraded at Urovanzavod, which now has over 30,000 employees working a 4-shift 24/7 pattern of both refurbishment and T-90M production. We've been seeing a lot of T-62s, T-64s, T-72A, B and T-80B models refurbished with improved power plants, second and third generation thermals, new optics, electronic warfare packages, ERA, contact packages etc. Realistically speaking, on the tank front we've seen very little tank-on-tank engagement, so from a practicality purpose these are fire support platforms above all else, and in those situations some of the tanks being refurbished with second, third generation thermals are actually more capable than the tanks Russia sent in on day one, which only had first generation thermals or in some cases IR sights from the 50s. This doesn't hold true all the time of course, but it's worth keeping in mind as I've seen this assumption that Russia is just taking vehicles out of open-air reserve yards, rust and all, and throwing them into Ukraine, which whilst it has happened on a few occasions, their own vehicles almost always get sent for refurbishment prior to deployment.
100 years on and we again have a trench war with heavy artillery being a major factor. Just goes to show, war is ever unpredictable. That's largely because Ukraine has no air power to project and Russia is unable to suppress Ukrainian AWS systems. Also, they probably have big supply chain issues preventing them from fielding a lot of aircraft at once. If either side had air superiority, this probably would have been over by now or significantly closer to the end.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.